The latest year for which we have data is 2005. Highway data runs 2 years behind reality. There's a big, thick book called Highway Statistics, and that's where these numbers come from. And if you read that book, it has more information about formulas and highways than you could possibly imagine. It also has heartbreaking numbers about fatalities on highways. One of the things I'd like to suggest to the transit folks here is that we don't have a transit book like that, and we need it. The American Public Transit Association does an absolutely great job of collecting data, but not every transit operation belongs. And we have Western and rural state senators in the Senate that will determine the future of transit, and all they are interested in is the very small services that serve the elderly in rural areas. We need data on all of that, lots more than we have. Look what happened. The big blue line is our cumulative average. We basically now average since 1956 get 93 cents back for every dollar we contribute. Before we celebrate here, remember that for most of its life, the Highway Trust Fund earned interest. The average state gets back $1.10 for every dollar it contributes. But at $1.05, we're doing the best we've ever done. Furthermore, we are getting the highest possible amount sub-allocated directly to urban areas, with the most freedom I can remember over how you spend it. There is never enough, but at least it's dedicated to urban areas. And you don't end up fighting with other folks who have first claim on it for rural projects. The other thing we have is a dedicated source of revenue in the mass transit account of the Highway Trust Fund. This is very important and must be preserved. Look at what you have accomplished since 1981. What happened was, some folks at NOACA, on the day when I visited, talked about what a terrible deal we were getting out of the Highway Trust Fund. We were planning our hearts out, and there wasn't any money to build it, no matter what we planned. And we looked at the states in the Highway Statistics book, and we found 10 of them that were in the same boat we were. But most of them were in the Midwest. It goes straight down the middle except for Illinois. Illinois was not a donor state because it had someone named Rustenkowski in the House. It also included, of all states, Florida and California. That, to anyone who counts votes in Congress, is a magic coalition. So the idea for that coalition was born literally at NOACA staff offices. We took that idea to Washington. We took it to members of the Northeast Ohio delegation. They, in turn, not only bought onto it, but offered to introduce their own legislation to correct that situation, and worked tirelessly to insist, which we could now do. We had that coalition, and they could not pass the next highway transit bill without us, on getting a much better return. Did it go all the way up to 93 or 105? No, it did not. It went up to 81. Or to 85. It has stepped up since those days. But what happened was that some kind of key people were in the right place at the right time, and Northeast Ohio worked together to change the face of this nation. You not only got a better return for Ohio and for the greater Cleveland area and the 5 counties, you got a better return for all of the Midwest, even eventually Illinois, and Texas and California and Florida. Now, there are a couple of people who need to be recognized in that effort. One of them is here today, Andy Fidensky. Andy Fidensky was a staffer for Mary Rose O'Carr, and because her office was in the Cannon, which happens to be closest to the metro stop, it happened to be the first place I went. And all of a sudden, Andy couldn't get enough data, and Andy wanted a map. And I called NOACA, and we got a map. We did not have email then. It was a snail mail letter, but we got maps, and they were colored maps. And he showed it to Mary Rose. And Mary Rose called me in at about 6:35 on a Friday afternoon, and she said, "You got me into this, what do we do now?" But she did more than that, because she talked to other folks. We had talked to Lou Stokes, he was incredible. Don Pease was amazing. We just had wonderful support. Once people acknowledged the fact that we were really getting a very bad deal out of the Federal Highway and Transit Program. So then they went and testified before the committee as a panel. And then they organized the other members from the other donor states for a second panel. And they threatened to keep pulling up as many panels as was necessary to make the point very clear. In doing all of that, you and your congressional delegation changed the shape of the highway transit program, and I think in a very healthy way. I want you to think about that success and remember something else about it. We had incredible support from private sector. If Dr. Jack Lacotte is here, I haven't seen him, but Jack Lacotte and Ted Olson worked through the Build Up Greater Cleveland group. And we not only had the support of the Growth Association or Build Up Greater Cleveland, we had support from private sector all over Ohio. We had white shoe law firms call, and trucking companies call, and universities call. We had incredible support from private sector, and that's another lesson that I learned. If you're going to make a big change, you can't do it only with private sector, and you can't do it only with public sector. You have to do it with both. Okay, next slide. You've heard the good news and the bad news about transportation. There is no good news on the clean water front except perhaps the incredible progress we've made since 1970. And it has been incredible. But I have to tell you, there are not enough members of Congress who are willing to put themselves in a position of jeopardy to make a reauthorization of the Clean Water Act possible, let alone the funding it takes to make it work. We have done the easy things, now we have to do the hard things like non-point. Lots of folks, including farmers, want to help with that, but they can't do it without money. So that's where we are with the Clean Water Act. It reminds me of a trip I took once. I was invited to tour the Kitty Hawk, which is an aircraft carrier. It's it's like a city on a ship. And every neighborhood is in a watertight compartment. It's amazing. And we got to talk to the guy in the gold braid on a bridge. And he said several things I've never forgotten. He said it takes 5 nautical miles to stop and 5 nautical miles to turn. And one of the people I was with said, yeah, but what happens if there's something between you and the 5 miles? And the man in the gold braid said, whether it's a waterfall or a concrete wall, there is precious little we can do. How do you avoid trouble was obviously the next question. And he explained that he relies on incredible real-time information from a number of sources, plus a very clear understanding of what his mission is. What I would like to suggest to you that this is a wonderful analogy for the situation we're in now. That aircraft carrier is the Surface Transportation Act, the next one, the son of Safety Lou. Shorthand for it in Washington is Lou 2. It's being driven by Congress and the President. You are Mission Command. You are the ones that decide what the mission is. All of us are responsible for making sure the President and Congress have the data they need so we don't hit the concrete wall. But that aircraft carrier called the Surface Transportation Act, Lou 2 is moving at the speed of the calendar, and we're 7 miles out. We have some very heavy work ahead of us.